Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk all about farming, specifically livestock farming in Zimbabwe. Today we would like to discuss an interesting business which involves the production of table eggs. Table eggs are eggs that are consumed in households, and we consume eggs almost daily in the majority of households in Zimbabwe. But where do eggs come from? Eggs come from hens. The hens can be either commercial breeds or some of the free-range birds. Now, based on 2023 records, each person consumed about 58 eggs per year in Zimbabwe, and this number is estimated to continue to grow for a foreseeable future. Therefore, this business is one which presents a lot of opportunities for revenue generation and also for creation of employment and also other benefits within this industry. Now, today we'd like to take our discussion through the industry overview. Then we move on to how one can start this kind of a business. Then we look also at the housing aspect of the business. And then we look at the bird's health and biosecurity. And also move on to the feeding part, which is the most important part. Then we move on to the marketing aspect and also some of the challenges that affect this industry. Now, let's start with the industry overview. Who are the main players in this industry? When you talk of the major players involved in egg production in Zimbabwe, we can talk of Ivins Zimbabwe. Ivins is one of the most common or a huge player in this industry. It is heavily involved in every aspect of the commercial poultry production or table egg production. For instance, it is involved in the breeding aspect, then also on the distribution part of the odd chicks, as well as the rearing part, and also the marketing and distribution of eggs in Zimbabwe. Then we can also talk of Festive Eggs Private Limited, which is also another key player in this industry, as well as many other players who are also heavily involved in this industry. Then we can also talk of large-scale commercial farms who are heavily involved, keeping quite a lot or a huge number of birds and involved in this kind of business. Then we can also talk of medium-scale farmers who are also involved in this kind of business and they are upcoming in this area. Then we can talk of the small-scale farmers who are also another key player, and they keep the birds at their backyards and for their own consumption, and also they sell the extras. Now, what does it take to start this kind of a business? It depends on your market or on your demand. Now, the first thing you have to do is to identify your demand, maybe in terms of local demand. Here, what you are basically doing is studying the consumption patterns of eggs and also identifying your potential customers. Now, when it comes to identifying your potential customers, the more the people, the better. If you can identify a certain group which can uptake your eggs, then this is good for you. Now, also look at the market trends, for instance, the prices, and also how do they vary based on seasons, and also at what points or at what seasons do we have significant price increases. Also think around emerging markets. For instance, there are some trends, especially nowadays, whereby some groups of people prefer eggs from free-range chickens and also maybe eggs from cage-free birds. It's also a trend as long as we have a well-defined customer base. Now, also think around establishing or writing down your business plan. Basically, here you are defining a scale you would like to start with. Are you going to start as a medium-scale farmer or at a commercial level? Now, in this business plan, also put into aspect the financial projections, where you estimate your projected startup cost and also issues around your housing cost, the cost of establishing the houses, and also operating cost such as your feed cost and also labor cost associated with running the business, and also put into perspective your revenue projections. Basically, here you are going to project what is your expected revenue over a certain period of time and what are the expected prices. Now, it is also important to understand the production cycle of the layer beds, especially the commercial breeds. So now when it comes to the layer beds, the production cycle, we are looking at around 7 to 2 weeks with possible extension with good management. What do you mean by this? We mean these layers are going to stay in production for at least 72 weeks. So this is also important for you to plan around and also understand how long are you going to stay in this business, and also for you to develop the attitude to be profitable in this business or this kind of business, or especially the management skills and also the marketing aspect. Discuss the housing aspect. When it comes to layer beds housing, we can talk mainly of a battery cage system and also the deep litter system. These are the major common housing aspects of this business. Now, battery cages involve the beds being raised while they are enclosed individually in cages or maybe in groups of 4 or 2. It's just varies, but in major circumstances, the beds are housed individually. So the individual cages also tend to be equipped with automatic water drinkers, and also feed is provided in these cages. So the birds lay the eggs, and the eggs are dropped via a channel where you can pick them. Now, the deep litter system is one of the most common system which is used at various scales. The advantage of this system is that the birds tend to exhibit their normal behavior, and also it doesn't infringe on the welfare of the birds. So basically, it tends to be nice because it reduces the stress of the birds, and also birds can move freely within the housing. So the thing you have to put into consideration is that you have to have a proper stocking density, or the recommended stocking density. In Zimbabwe, when it comes to the recommended stocking density, we're talking about 6 to 7 birds per square meter. So basically, this number also gives you a perspective when it comes to your construction on what is the size you are expecting, and also putting into consideration the possible expansion and other factors. Now, these deep litter systems houses are then equipped with nesting boxes. These are the boxes in which the birds tend to lay their eggs, and also they are equipped with the drinkers and feeders to provide water and feed to the birds. It is essential to adhere to this recommended stocking density so as to avoid extreme competition on the feeders and drinkers, and also to allow the birds to move freely and also exhibit their normal behavior. Now, open houses are also pretty common. Open houses or with a deep litter system are one of the major common in Zimbabwe, because our climates are quite conducive extremes when it comes to too much heat or too much coldness. Therefore, these open houses, they are quite reliable when it comes to egg production in Zimbabwe. Now, it is also important to put into perspective the lighting programs, especially with our housing aspect, because we have to understand that the layer productions or the layer beds are stimulated to lay due to the presence of light. For instance, at around 34 weeks, we are talking of around 16 hours of light per day to be supplied to these beds. So basically, this means during winter times, you have to supply. And also, it's something you have to learn around, especially when you want to engage in this kind of business. You have to learn around the mechanism of how to add artificial light, and what are the periods which light is important within the production cycle or the growing cycle and every aspect. So it's important for you to learn this information. So now it is also important to maintain high levels of hygiene in the houses. This is important for disease control intervention. When you talk of birds' health, we are maintaining the birds at a recommended health level, free from pathogen or disease-causing organisms, such that they maintain their best level of production. Then let's talk of biosecurity. When we talk of biosecurity, it is one of the critical components when it comes to livestock production anywhere in the world. The act of preventing diseases coming into our farm, and also diseases leaving our farm. So basically, some diseases can originate from our farm. Therefore, it is important that we prevent these diseases from moving out of our farm and infect other farmers or other farms. Basically, when you look at this, we are looking at proper disposal of dead birds and also proper maintenance of records within the farm. Now, another key thing is to prevent diseases coming into our farm, we have to establish fences around our poultry houses. And also, this fence should have controlled entry gates, which remains locked at most times. Then we can also establish a foot bath with disinfectants, so that when people or when the workers pass through, they tend to disinfect the foot. And also think around establishing hand sanitation stations at entry points. This is important because you are going to touch eggs, you are going to touch the drinkers and also the feed troughs. Therefore, we don't want to spread the diseases from our hands into these drinkers and also feed troughs. Now, also think around scheduled animal health visits. For instance, this is essentially important for some of the veterinary experts who can come from time to time to monitor the birds and also see if there are any anomalies or any deviation from normal health. So this is basically important, especially when we have a large number or a large batches of these layer beds. And also, it is important to understand the vaccination schedules, because vaccination is one such important aspect which we cannot ignore, especially at big numbers. Program is that we expect an egg every 24 to 72 hours from each bird. Now, we have to understand that the feeding aspect comes in phases. For example, when we have the day-old chicks, we are looking at around the chick starter, which is the main feed for these day-old chicks. And basically, this comes in crumbs or mesh. And basically, we are looking from around day-old up to around 8 weeks. Chicks will be consuming this chick starter. The idea here is that we would like to provide enough feed to stimulate growth and also feathering, such that the chicks can maintain their warmth. This is the objective of this feeding, and also stimulate growth in these chicks. Now, we can also talk of the next phase, which is from 8 weeks up to about 16 weeks, the developer feed or the grower feed. Basically, what we are targeting here, or the objective of this feed, is that we would like to promote the development of the whole digestive system and also the development of the reproductive system, which is essential for egg production. So we'd like to develop the whole gut system such that they are able to absorb nutrients which are then channeled to egg production, 1.4 kgs, and would want not to go above 2 kgs, because the birds now become overfed or too fed. We now go through the first layer phase, which is the layer phase 1 feed. And with this feed is we are going to stimulate egg laying. The idea is once the production reach 5%, you then move to the next phase, which is the layer phase 2. Basically, the layer phase 2 has high calcium, which is essential for egg production. It is also important that you take a controlled feeding approach, so that you avoid overfeeding or underfeeding. The disadvantage with underfeeding is that you can fail to stimulate laying, because the birds can just consume something to maintain their body weights and fail to meet the requirements for egg production. And also, on the negative aspects of overfeeding is that the birds tend to become more fat or build up fat within them, such that they fail to lay eggs. So therefore, it is important that we adhere to the recommended feeding quantities and maintain the bird's weight, and also at the same time promoting egg production. Basically, when it comes to the layer feeds or the layer phases aspect, we are looking at around 110 grams of feed per each hen, or for each layer point. And it is also very important that you split feed, or you approach it as a split feed, whereby you can adopt twice feeding regimes or thrice a day, so that you spread through the day. It is also important to understand the whole mechanism of the feeding aspect, especially when you are raising from day old. You have to understand it transitions points, and also at what point are you going to increase your feeds, step up and also step down. And also basically from time to time it is important that you learn about these things and also about how you manage your feed properly. The next key thing we are going to move on to is the water aspect. So birds should be provided with water all times. Every time the water should be available. This is essentially important. Besides availability, also think around water quality. This is now when we talk of the presence of minerals within this water, and also things around hardness, taste or odor. So basically we would want to have a high quality water, because bad quality water strongly impacts our production. So it is important from time to time that you can send samples to be tested at the lab facilities, and also take normal or correction or treatment procedures. Now let's move on to the next phase, which is the marketing aspect of this kind of business. Now, when it comes to the marketing aspects, it is important to build relationships with the markets. For example, you have to know your market. You have to know who are you going to supply your eggs to, and how often, and what price are they going to pay. So the major marketing aspect, you can, if you are producing quite big numbers, you can supply to retailers who then sell to the market at an agreed prices. Then you can also think of wholesalers. Some of wholesalers can buy from you as long as you are consistent, and also you can strike supply agreements with them. Farm gate sales, whereby at your farm gate you can put eggs for sale signage, and sometimes if you have a farm shop, people can come and buy from there. And also think around people around you, and also word of mouth, as well as some communication channels such as WhatsApp groups and other social media communication. It also tends to work wonders when it comes to marketing agricultural produce. However, it is also important to have some markets, maybe 3 or 4 or type of markets, which are your major markets you supply. Maybe your restaurants, or somewhere you have to supply a shop, the retailers. It's important to have that so that you know the key market, and you don't get stuck with the eggs at the end of the day. So another key thing you have to think of is the extension and also advisory services. So it is also important you have to understand where you get your knowledge from. You have to get your knowledge from the experts, and also some major farmers who are already in the industry. And another key information supplier or advisory service supplier is the feed suppliers. When you have big numbers and you have a relationship with your feed suppliers, they tend to offer expert advice, and also sometimes field visits and advisory services to you. For instance, we can talk of the suppliers such as Profits. They tend to do this kind of things, and also our 5-8 and many more. So basically, it's something you have to put in mind or into consideration when you want to start this kind of business. Around feeding, around weights, what to expect, when to expect a first egg, what, and also some booklets around birds' health, such that when you see this kind of behavior, you should know this is the disease or this is the infection, and you have to take this approach. And also, when you see this behavior, you have to take this medicine or this control mechanism. They also tend to give you master classes from time to time, whereby you can get some lessons on how to management of bird stress. For instance, how to use ideas around reducing bird stress, such as patching, whereby you can establish a patches or some designs where birds can fly up to and rest there, and also hanging some objects to reduce stress, as well as provision maybe some greens or some vegetable leaves, such that the birds peck to reduce their stress, and also reduce fighting, as well as pecking each other. So it's important to understand the whole mechanism or the whole industry, and also put everything into aspect. Your planning, you learn the management aspects, and also the marketing aspects, which is also very important. Now, when it comes also to the business, there are several challenges kind of business model. And also, the market tend to be volatile, especially with seasons. For instance, during the festive seasons or during major holidays, we tend to see an increased demand and also increased prices. So this basically tend to benefit the farmer or the producer. Therefore, you have to understand your market and also how are you going to navigate these times of increased demands, and also how do you take advantage of these times. And also the knowledge gap, which is quite there within this industry. Relate with the major players in this industry. Continuous communication with your feed suppliers. These are the main major players when it comes to information dissemination in this industry. So it's something you have to take advantage of. Also, you can send to training services from time to time so that they remain up to date with key information in the industry and also key updates. And also, you have to think about the cost of feed, which is the main hindrance when it comes to layer production. So the idea is when you purchase feeds in bulk, you can try to negotiate for discounts, or you can come together into groups of 3 or 5 major or big farmers, and you try to purchase your feeds together in those groups such that you negotiate for discounts from the suppliers. It's something that tends to work wonders. The cost of feed is also tend to be affected maybe or increased due to issues around droughts and also issues around food competition, which is one of the diseases which can affect the business negatively. The birds, when they are infected with this kind of a business, or this kind of conclusion, what we are saying is that when you want to start this kind of business, you have to understand the scale which want to start with. Are you going to start as a commercial farmer, or as a medium scale farmer, or as a small scale farmer on your backyard? And also understand the knowledge, and also how are you going to start? Do you understand the knowledge behind the management aspects of the business? Do you understand the marketing aspects of the business? Where are you going to market your eggs? Who are your main customers? And also understand the cost structure around the marketing aspects. For instance, are you going to transport this to the market, or the market is coming to collect from you? And also adopt several marketing strategies. For instance, farm gate sales, and also market from several perspectives, from the social media aspect. Also push your marketing to the retailers and also wholesalers. The idea is you have to bite what you can chew, because there's sometimes you might overmarket your product such that you tend to fail to supply. So basically, it's something you have to also put into perspective, or you have to also understand the limits of your marketing. Now, the other key thing is your housing aspect, whereby you put your housing in order based on your quantities or on your scale of production. Make it a good housing that promotes the welfare of the birds, with perches everywhere, such that the birds can climb there and rest and reduce their stress. Enrich it with hanging objects, such that the birds can be observant and also reduce their stress. Also, sometimes provision of additional leaves, vegetable leaves, such that the birds can chop and reduce their stress. Also, think around the idea of light control to stimulate the birds. Then the aspect of biosecurity, which we cannot play around when it comes to livestock production, as well as maintenance of animal health or birds' health in good shape. In conclusion, as I'm concluding, the feeding aspect and also the drinking water, think around the feeds, the cost around those feeds, and also how are you going to manage the cost, and are you prepared with the operating cost of you meeting the cost of feed? And think around, are you starting from a point of lay birds or from a day old chicks? Think around everything, the management aspect, the feeds, the housing, the lights, the heating elements, and also think around the marketing aspect, which you should invest heavily. For instance, build relationships with the market, build relationship from time to time, and also build relationship with the other players in the industry. Also build relationship with your feed suppliers, your profits, your 5-8, and other key players in this industry. People from the veterinary department, build relationship with these. They tend to help you to push your business and also to establish properly. In my parting words, I can say this is a business which is quite profitable. If you run your numbers well, it is quite profitable. You can generate a lot of revenue from it. You can employ a number of people from it. You can contribute positively to the economies of your area and as well as economies of the nation. It is one business which can help you to diversify even your livestock business. Therefore, let's approach it with a commercial perspective in mind. Thank you. Please subscribe, share, and also comment.